Piper with the Metal Arts Guild of Georgia, and I'm here with our tool guru, Dallas, for a little tool time today. We're going to be talking about the mini torch. I think as an instructor, that's probably one of the most popular questions. The fear of the mini torch. How to use the mini torch. Show me how to use the mini torch. So it is such a important tool in smithing. So Dallas, help us out here.
Yeah. Hopefully we can break it down and put aside some of those fears that people have about the little torch. It's just another source of heat. It is a little more complicated in that now we've got two inputs. We don't just have control of our fuel, we have oxygen. And oxygen changes the game completely. It allows the flame to be much hotter and much smaller. That means that this torch is going to really lend itself to those detailed techniques you need. If you're trying to, it also takes advantage of how different metals handle heat. If you're working with gold, this is going to be your best friend. Our lovely handy heat torch is great for silver, soft bushy flames that are very silver friendly. But if you wanted to work with gold or you wanted to work with platinum, having that higher temperature in a smaller form is going to be very advantageous. But this can also be very useful when you're working with silver, especially if you're wanting to ball up the ends of wire really quickly before something bad happens further down the road. You can heat things up really quick once you bring oxygen to the party. Now this does mean that on the regulator side of things, if you saw the previous video on the acetylene torch, everything we learned from that is going to go double. You've got two regulators, two hoses, so connecting everything is the same. It's just you've got to do it twice. Check for leaks the same. The other thing that is worth mentioning with the little torch in any two tank system is I do recommend that you have either check valves or flashback arresters, because you have the possibility when you have two tanks of one side of the equation pushing flames through the system to the other side, and it's incredibly rare, but when and if it ever happened, it would be absolutely catastrophic. So if you've got a two tank system, make sure you've got check valves or flashback arresters on it. Now back to the torch end, the fun end of it. Let me go ahead and just open these up. So we've got a number 4 tip on this one, and it's worth mentioning too, this torch will work with a variety of fuels. Here at MAG, we use it with oxy and acetylene. In the commercial side of metal smithing, usually they're running oxypropane, and those two fuels make it a completely different torch. Oxyacetylene is notably hotter than oxypropane. Less common, but folks who work with a lot of platinum, they'll even use it with oxy and hydrogen. Super clean, super hot. That's not in the purview of most of the metalsmiths we encounter here. So when you're working with either fuel, you're always going to open up the fuel first. There's a good example of what not to do too. That happened because I didn't tighten where the nut met the handle. Let's try that again. And the thing you're going to note, and I'm going to allow this to make the point, there is a lot of soot coming off of this because I haven't included the oxygen. And I'm going to bring the oxygen, and the flame is going to get smaller and a lot hotter. If this was propane, then we wouldn't be getting, I could do this and we'd have this flame and there wouldn't be any soot at all. And that's why in the commercial side of things, they really do like propane. It's a very pleasant flame to work with. However, in a lot of situations, propane won't be allowed and you'll be forced to either use acetylene, or some people prefer acetylene, especially for techniques like if you are balling up the ends of wire near stone beads, and which is always a risky proposition, but it can be done if you can get in and out really quick. And there is almost nothing better than oxyacetylene for that. And I can get this flame. So here's the thing. We've got these two inputs. I have so much control. I can vary this flame so much. I can get it really big. And then by contrast, I can get an incredibly tiny flame, and I haven't even changed the tip. So you've got a lot of control and versatility. And most people who use the little torch a lot, they'll settle on one, maybe two tips that they use for everything. It comes with 5 tips, and I encourage you, if you get one of these, to go through the gambit and play with it. If you're, in general purposes, most people who are working with it with oxypropane, they'll use the 6 or the 7 tip. The biggest tips are the most popular. That tends to be overkill for most people once you switch to acetylene. So people who use oxyacetylene a lot tend to use a 4 the most. Use those as starting off points. If you get one of these torches, I encourage you to play with it. Go outside the norm and see what you like. When you're all done, well, let me step back a little. I went over, I did this without talking about it. When you're lighting the torch, it's always fuel on first, and then oxygen. Something you will probably run into, especially if you've just got this and you've never lit it and you're lighting it the first time. Let me see if I can make this happen. A lot of people will do this. And they'll turn the oxygen, because of that sootiness that we're talking about, people feel rushed. They want to bring the oxygen to the party as quickly as possible. And they tend to do it too quick, and they blow out their flame. It can blow out and make a loud pop too, and that can be a little scary, so be prepared for that. But then with practice, you'll get that really controlled and really quick. And then when you're all done, it's always oxygen off first and then fuel. It's just the reverse of what it was to get on. Let's go ahead and show off some of the variations between the different tips. And we'll just jump from one extreme to the other. Snug it up. This is the number 7. That is a big flame. That's a lot of heat. If you could even use this as a small melting torch, as long as you're not using, melting too much. But with the 7, you can get something heated up really quick. Now, because the flame itself tends to be a little bit smaller in area than, say, an acetylene torch, acetylene air, like the handy heat. When you're using this, you will find yourself moving your hand around more. Go back to the 4. So if I've got a small piece and I'm annealing, with a torch like this, I can just encompass the whole thing within the cloud of flame that it creates, and I can anneal a small piece with hardly moving my hand at all. If I'm using this, I'm getting a lot more heat, but it's in a much more focused area. So if I'm annealing with this, I'm going to find myself having to move my hand more like this. It'll do the same job, but your techniques are going to have to change a little. However, especially if you have the ability to work with gold, then you can really take advantage of this torch, because gold doesn't move heat like silver does. When you're working with silver and copper, they move heat like nobody's business, and you've got to you've got to make sure you're bringing the whole piece up to temperature before anything works. You'll end up melting what you're trying to do if you're not bringing the surrounding areas up to temperature. Whereas with gold, it does not have that mechanism for sharing heat that silver does. The heat is going to stay localized to where you put it. And so as a result, you can heat up a joint and get in and out really quick, and areas won't even get oxidized around it. There's like a parlor trick that repair jewelers would do sometimes when they were sizing a solitaire ring. They could hold the ring by the diamond and size it while it's in their hand. You would never even want to try that with silver. You'll end up with blisters. But with gold, you can get away with that. So becoming aware of the differences in the metals that you're using and the differences that you can get from these different torches. If you have a vision of where you want to go, then you'll be able to buy a torch that'll get you there. And the little torch is exceptionally good and versatile. And it's more expensive. That is something to consider too, because all of the expenses involved in an acetylene torch are doubled, because now we've got 2 tanks, 2 regulators, and it's a more expensive torch by itself. But if it's in your budget and you're looking for versatility, you would not be disappointed in a torch like this. And we're using the Smith Little Torch here as our example, and it's probably far and away the most popular in the industry. It's an exceedingly comfortable torch to use, very ergonomic. There are other 2-tank torches out there. The Mako Midget is built like a tank. It's a heavier, less comfortable torch to use, but it works well. There's a very old style torch called the Hoke. Again, a bigger, not as ergonomic torch, but very popular. And then there's several others. And a lot of what we're talking about here, as far as the flame characteristics, how much versatility you've got, because now you've got control over 2 variables, it applies to those across the board. I will say, if you end up with the little torch, the one cautionary note I would say is take care to be gentle with the hoses. Some of the ergonomics they've accomplished are at the expense of durability. These are not the most durable hoses, and if you know that you're rough on your tools, you may consider one of the other brands over the Smith. But it is a really enjoyable torch to use. The way the knobs are set up, you've got really fine control. And I just encourage you, if you get one of these, don't be afraid of it. Play with it. And if you find yourself feeling unsure, if you get the opportunity, come by MAG. We'll be happy to help you out and get you comfortable with it. Especially once a lot of times you won't know that you've got a question until you start using it. And you're wondering, why is it acting this way or that? It'll almost always come down to an awareness and control over that fuel to oxygen ratio. And we'd be happy to help you with that. So come see us soon.